the restaurant that redefined luxury without gold or marble. There was nothing to photograph, no spectacle to admire, and yet people left convinced they had witnessed something rare. This story matters today because luxury has become louder, shinier, and increasingly detached from meaning. But there was a moment when one restaurant proved that restraint could feel richer than excess. To understand how luxury was redefined without gold or marble, we need to return to a place that rejected symbols in favor of substance. Because the same confusion between price and value still shapes our choices now. For generations, luxury dining followed a familiar script. Heavy doors, polished surfaces, uniformed staff moving in rehearsed precision. Comfort came from predictability. Expense signaled importance. The experience reassured guests that they belonged. Then a restaurant opened that broke nearly every rule. The space was understated. The materials were modest. The room felt calm, almost domestic. Nothing announced prestige. And that absence unsettled people. Guests arrived searching for cues. Something to justify the cost. Something to photograph. Instead, they were met with simplicity. Natural light. Unadorned tables. Silence that felt intentional. The message was subtle, but firm. Pay attention elsewhere. The kitchen shared that philosophy. Ingredients were pristine, but never decorative. Plates carried only what was necessary. No excess, no distraction. The food demanded presence, not admiration. At first, confusion dominated reactions. Some guests felt underwhelmed. Others leaned in, curious. Conversations slowed. Meals stretched longer than expected. People began noticing details they usually ignored. Texture, temperature, balance. Slowly, something shifted. Luxury stopped feeling like performance. It began to feel like trust. Trust that nothing extra was needed. Trust that the experience could hold weight without proof. That idea challenged more than design. It challenged identity. Because when status symbols disappear, all that remains is feeling. And that was only the beginning of the disruption. As word spread, the restaurant attracted a particular kind of attention, not from those chasing trends, but from those questioning them. Designers, chefs, artists, and thinkers arrived curious, almost cautious. They wanted to understand why the experience lingered long after the meal ended. What they encountered was intentional discomfort. The absence of spectacle removed familiar signals. Without cues to lean on, guests had to decide for themselves what mattered. Some felt exposed. Others felt relieved. The restaurant offered no validation, only presence. Service followed the same logic. Staff moved quietly without ceremony. Questions were answered simply. Recommendations were offered without persuasion. Nothing pushed. Nothing performed. The guests remained in control, and that felt unusual. Behind this calm was discipline. Every choice had been debated, refined, stripped back. Materials were chosen for longevity, not impression. Processes were built for consistency, not speed. The goal was not to impress once, but to endure quietly. However, the wider industry struggled to interpret the success. How could something so restrained command such loyalty? How could absence feel indulgent? Copycats emerged quickly, mimicking the aesthetic without the intent. Minimalism became a shortcut, not a philosophy. That dilution frustrated creators. The ideal was never about emptiness. It was about clarity, removing noise to amplify meaning. Without that intention, the result felt hollow. Guests began noticing the difference. Some spaces felt sparse. This one felt full. The contrast sharpened the restaurant's identity even further. It wasn't minimal. It was precise. Yet precision brought its own tension. Expectations grew. People arrived wanting transformation. Silence now carried pressure. Could the experience remain generous without adding anything? The answer would come not through expansion or reinvention, but through consistency. Night after night, choice after choice. And soon, that consistency would be tested in a way no design decision could solve. The test arrived quietly, disguised as success. Reservations stretched months ahead. Attention intensified. Guests arrived carrying expectations heavier than any object ever placed in the room. Silence, once liberating, began to feel fragile. Every pause risked misinterpretation. Every restraint risked disappointment. The restaurant faced a paradox. The very absence that defined it now had to satisfy people searching for meaning. Inside the team, pressure mounted. Should something be added? A gesture, a flourish, a signal of generosity. The temptation was subtle but constant. To reassure, to explain, to justify. But each potential addition felt like erosion. One extra detail would invite another. One explanation would weaken trust. The philosophy allowed no half measures. Either the experience remained pure or became another performance. Then came criticism, sharp and public. Some called the restaurant cold. Others labeled it austere. They mistook intention for detachment. The narrative threatened to shift from thoughtful to unwelcoming. The team faced a defining choice: adapt to perception or remain aligned with purpose. Appeasing misunderstanding would bring comfort. Holding course would bring risk. They chose restraint again, not out of stubbornness, but conviction. They refined service further, deepened listening, strengthened hospitality through presence, not additions. Warmth came from attention, not decoration. Gradually, the tone shifted. Guests began describing the experience differently. Calm, grounded, human. The space felt less like a concept and more like a refuge. In resisting reaction, the restaurant preserved its core, and in doing so, it revealed the truth behind its quiet power. Luxury was never about what was missing. It was about what was felt. That understanding carried the story toward its most resonant moment. The moment of clarity did not arrive through praise or rankings. It arrived through return. Guests came back, quietly, without urgency. They returned not to be impressed, but to feel steady again. The restaurant never expanded its idea. It deepened it. Staff learned names, not preferences. Time was given generously without performance. Hospitality became invisible but unmistakable. People felt seen without being managed. In a landscape crowded with signals of wealth, this place offered something rarer: emotional security, the confidence that nothing more was required. That presence itself was enough. Over time, its influence spread far beyond design or dining. Other industries noticed. Retail spaces softened. Workplaces quieted. Experiences shifted from spectacle to intention. The restaurant had redefined luxury without ever naming it. Today, that lesson feels increasingly relevant. We are surrounded by excess, yet starved for meaning. We add features, layers, noise, hoping value will emerge. But sometimes, value appears only when we stop adding. The restaurant proved that luxury is not about what you display. It is about what you protect. Attention, care, trust. And in a world rushing to be louder, it chose to remain calm. Subscribe to join the journey. The restaurant